The crystal chandeliers above Amara Okoye's head refracted light into 1,000 tiny prisms, each one a reminder that she didn't belong here. Her fingers, dark against the pale champagne flutes, arranged them on a silver tray with precision she'd learned to perform while her mind wandered elsewhere. The glass was cold. Everything in the Han family mansion was cold, the marble floors that echoed footsteps like judgments, the air conditioning that raised goosebumps on her arms, the careful smiles of people who looked through her as if she were furniture. Around her, Korean conversations swirled like smoke. She caught fragments: family, business, respect, words she'd learned to recognize even when their full meaning escaped her. 6 months in Seoul, and she still felt like she was translating a language she'd never truly speak. 2 years, she reminded herself, the mantra that got her through each day. Just survive 2 years. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the weight of invisible eyes pressed heavier on her shoulders. The ancestral gathering had drawn over 200 guests, politicians in dark suits, women dripping in jewellery that cost more than her father's funeral, children who'd never known what it meant to choose between medicine and food. Her father's face flashed behind her eyes, the wooden coffin, her mother's trembling hands reaching for pills she could no longer afford. The contract Amara had signed in a cramped agency office in Lagos, her pen scratching across paper that promised money, opportunity, and a future that felt like surrender. A laugh cut through the murmur of the crowd, sharp, bright, and aimed like a blade. Yura Han. Amara's stomach tightened. She didn't need to look up to know that laugh. She'd heard it before, always followed by correction, criticism, or cruelty wrapped in silk. The room seemed to inhale collectively, conversations pausing mid-sentence. Amara focused on the champagne flutes, counting them. 12. She needed 12 on this tray. Her hands trembled slightly, and she hated herself for it. The click of heels on marble, deliberate, coming closer. Amara straightened her spine, lifted her chin slightly, not defiance, just dignity. Whatever was coming, she would face it the way she'd faced everything since leaving home, silent, careful, unbreakable. But as Yura's shadow fell across her tray, Amara understood with sudden, cold clarity that tonight, survival wouldn't be enough. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who matter, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me which country you're watching from. I want to know I'm not alone in this. And whatever you do, don't click away yet, because what's about to happen in this hall will leave you absolutely speechless. Trust me, you need to see this. Amara's room above the Han family garage measured exactly 3 meters by 4. She'd measured it the first night, pacing the dimensions like a prisoner learning her cell. A narrow bed, a wooden dresser with a mirror that showed her face in fragments, a window that overlooked the garden she wasn't allowed to walk through. But it was hers. On the dresser sat a framed photograph, her parents on their wedding day, her father's smile wide and hopeful, her mother's eyes bright with dreams they'd actually believed in once. Beside it, her phone, screen cracked but still functioning, filled with voicemails she replayed every night before sleep. Amara, my daughter, I am feeling stronger today. The neighbours asked about you. I told them you were doing important work. I am so proud. Her mother's voice, thin and fragile, recorded 3 days ago. Amara closed her eyes, letting the Yoruba words wash over her like a prayer. Proud. That word carried weight heavier than any tray she'd lifted. She didn't just want to return home. She wanted to return as someone her mother could brag about, someone who'd gone abroad and come back whole, not broken by the weight of other people's expectations. Someone who hadn't just survived, but somehow, impossibly, thrived. The morning routine began at 5:30. Shower in the shared staff bathroom. Uniform pressed until the creases were sharp enough to cut. Hair pulled back into a neat bun that made her face look older, more serious. By 6, she was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast trays for the family members who would never remember her name. "You're here early again," Mrs. Han said, shuffling into the kitchen in her slippers. The elderly aunt of the family patriarch, 73 years old with hands twisted by arthritis and eyes that actually saw people. "Good morning, Mrs. Han." Amara smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her professional mask. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I should at my age." Mrs. Han lowered herself into a chair with a soft groan. "Is it time for my pills?" "In 20 minutes. I'll bring them with your tea." Amara had learned Mrs. Han's medication schedule within her first week, noting the times when no one else remembered. Small acts of care that cost nothing but attention. "You're a good girl, Amara. Too good for this house." The words settled in Amara's chest, warm and uncomfortable. Before she could respond, Min-jun appeared in the doorway, head of security, ex-military, with a face that revealed nothing but eyes that missed even less. "Morning," he nodded to both women. To Amara, in English, "Big event tonight. Stay alert." "I always am," she replied. Min-jun's expression shifted slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "The family isn't what people think. Remember that." Before Amara could ask what he meant, he was gone, leaving only the echo of boots on tile and a question hanging in the air. The day unfolded in its usual rhythm. Amara served lunch, cleaned guest rooms, translated for a confused Italian businessman who'd gotten lost on the grounds. When she found a wallet dropped near the koi pond, thick with cash and credit cards, she returned it to the front desk without opening it, without counting, without even considering otherwise. From across the entrance hall, a man in a dark suit watched her. Amara felt his gaze like heat on her back, but when she turned, he was already walking away. Tall, composed, moving through space like someone who'd never questioned whether he belonged anywhere. She didn't recognize him, but something about the way security deferred to him, the way even the head butler straightened when he passed, told her he was important. That night, in her small room, Amara opened the leather journal she kept hidden under her mattress. Pages filled with sketches, hotel lobbies, room layouts, business plans written in careful English. Dreams she'd had before everything fell apart. Dreams she told herself she'd return to. Okoye Hospitality Group she'd written at the top of one page, where every guest is seen. She ran her fingers over the words, then closed the journal quickly, feeling foolish. Tomorrow was the ancestral gathering. Tomorrow she needed to be invisible. But some part of her, the part that still dreamed in her father's voice, wondered what it might feel like to be seen. The ancestral gathering transformed the Han mansion into something from a film Amara had once watched about old money and older secrets. Over 200 guests filled the grand hall, politicians with practiced smiles, business partners assessing each other over champagne rims, foreign investors speaking in carefully neutral English. The air itself felt expensive, thick with perfume and power, and the unspoken hierarchies that governed rooms like this. Amara had requested kitchen duty. She always did for events like this. The kitchen was safe, hot, chaotic, but invisible. No one scrutinized you while you plated appetizers. But tonight, the head butler had other plans. "You'll serve the main hall," he'd said, not unkindly, but not open to negotiation. "Your English is better than the others. Some guests will need assistance." So here she stood, silver tray balanced perfectly, moving through clusters of conversation like water around stones. She'd learned the choreography of service, how to approach without interrupting, how to offer without imposing, how to disappear the moment she was no longer needed. "Excuse me," an elderly Korean man said in slow English, gesturing to his empty glass. "Of course, sir." Amara replaced it smoothly with a fresh champagne flute. "Thank you. What's your name?" The question surprised her. "Amara, sir." "Amara," he repeated carefully, testing the syllables. "Beautiful. Where are you from?" "Nigeria, sir." "Wonderful country. I visited Lagos in—" "Oh my God, did you hear that pronunciation?" Yura's voice cut through their exchange like scissors through silk. She appeared at Amara's elbow, stunning in a pale blue dress that probably cost more than Amara's annual salary, her smile sharp and amused. "It's Amara, honey, not Amara. You have to enunciate properly if you're going to work with international guests." The elderly man's expression tightened, but he said nothing. People rarely did. "My apologies," Amara said quietly. her accent suddenly thick in her own ears. No, it's fine. Yura's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. I'm sure you're doing your best. It's just... She turned to her cluster of friends, all designer dresses and expensive hair. Do they even have formal training in Africa? For hospitality work, I mean. The question hung in the air, wrapped in false curiosity and real cruelty. Some of Yura's friends laughed, nervous, complicit. Others suddenly found their phones fascinating. The elderly man walked away, disappointment evident in his stiff shoulders. No one intervened. No one ever did. We have universities, Amara said, her voice steady despite the heat rising in her chest. Hospitality programs. I was studying... That's wonderful, Yura interrupted, her tone suggesting it was anything but. She rattled off instructions in rapid Korean, gesturing to different areas of the room, speaking so fast that Amara caught only fragments. Guests, table, quickly. Understand? Amara paused, translating in her head, trying to piece together what was being asked of her. See? Yura turned back to her friends, exasperated. She's so slow. I speak clearly, and still... She sighed dramatically. Maybe we should get someone who actually understands service. This is embarrassing for everyone. The words landed like stones, each one carefully chosen, each one designed to hurt. Amara's hands trembled, her vision blurred at the edges. Every eye in the vicinity had turned toward her, some pitying, some entertained, all witnessing her humiliation. She wanted to scream. She wanted to explain that she'd been the top of her class, that she'd served hundreds of guests with excellence, that being slow to understand rapid Korean in a noisy room didn't make her stupid or incapable or less than. But she'd learned something in 6 months of survival. Sometimes dignity meant silence. She set her tray down on a nearby table with exquisite care, each movement deliberate. Her eyes burned, but no tears fell. She wouldn't give Yura that satisfaction. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and stood perfectly still, not in surrender, but in quiet refusal to crumble. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then the energy shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned toward the entrance. Even the string quartet faltered for a beat before recovering. A man had entered. No announcement, no dramatic flourish, just a presence that changed the air pressure in the room. He wore a dark suit, perfectly tailored but understated. His expression was calm, almost blank, but something about the way he moved suggested coiled power held carefully in check. Security straightened. Elders rose from their seats. The patriarch himself moved forward in greeting, his deference unmistakable. And Yura's smile, bright and sharp just seconds ago, froze on her face like ice cracking. Amara didn't know who he was, but she recognized power when it entered a room. The man's gaze swept across the hall, paused briefly on the scene near Amara, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or judgment. Then Seo Jun-hyuk walked deeper into the gathering, and everyone began breathing again. The party continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Amara watched from her position near the wall as people gravitated toward the man who'd entered, not crowding him, but orbiting, waiting for acknowledgement. Security personnel moved differently around him, their deference absolute. Even the family elders sought his approval with their eyes before speaking. That's Seo Jun-hyuk, another server whispered to Amara in English, unable to hide her awe. The family doesn't make major decisions without him. Amara nodded, filing the name away, trying to make herself invisible again. But invisibility was no longer working. She could feel gazes sliding toward her, curious, speculative, wondering what would happen next. Yura had disappeared into the crowd, her earlier confidence replaced by something more calculated. Her fiancé, a distant Han cousin named Tai Jin, stood rigid near the bar, his nervousness obvious in the way he kept adjusting his tie. What Amara didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Seo Jun-hyuk had been watching her for weeks. 3 weeks ago, he'd seen her find a diamond bracelet in the garden and immediately take it to the head butler, never once considering keeping it. 2 weeks ago, he'd observed her patiently helping Mrs. Han navigate the stairs when everyone else was too busy. 1 week ago, he'd watched her translate for a lost guest with kindness that cost her precious break time. He'd noticed her the way predators notice movement in their peripheral vision, instinctively, with complete attention. And tonight, he'd seen everything. The first direct interaction came 30 minutes later. Amara was collecting empty glasses near the terrace when a voice spoke in perfect English, accent neutral and calm. "What's your name?" She turned. Seo Jun-hyuk stood 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "Amara Okoye, sir." "Amara?" he repeated, pronunciation perfect on the first try. "You've worked here 6 months. No one's asked you that before, have they?" The observation was so unexpected, so precisely accurate, that Amara felt something crack in her chest. "No, sir. That ends tonight." He didn't elaborate, didn't explain, just nodded slightly and walked away, leaving Amara standing with her tray of empty glasses and a confusion that felt almost like hope. But hope was dangerous. Hope made you stupid. By the next morning, whispers had infected the staff quarters like fever. Amara heard them in fragments, Korean words she'd learned to recognize: favorite, mistress, protection. Yura's counterstrike was surgical. She didn't confront Amara directly. Instead, she spoke to the other staff, her voice carrying just loud enough to be overheard. "I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? Why else would he notice her? She must have... well, you know, these things happen. Foreign girls, powerful men." The implication spread like spilled ink, staining everything it touched. "Is it true?" Another maid asked Amara in the laundry room, her English halting but her meaning clear. "You and Mr. Seo?" "No," Amara said firmly. "Nothing happened. Nothing is happening." But the truth didn't matter. The story was better than the truth. Minjun found her later that day, his expression serious. "Mr. Seo doesn't do favours. If he's protecting you, there's a reason. Be careful." "I don't need protection," Amara said, more defensively than she intended. "I didn't ask for this." "No one asks for his attention. They just get it." Minjun's tone wasn't unkind. "But once you have it, things change." Mrs. Han was more direct. She cornered Amara in her room that evening, arthritis making her movements slow but her mind sharp as ever. "My nephew doesn't speak unless his words matter," she said in careful English. "When he does, listen." "Mrs. Han, I don't understand what's happening." "You will." The old woman patted Amara's hand. "Jun-hyuk sees things others miss. He saw you. That means something." But what it meant remained unclear. Amara was moved to a different work area, a quiet office building the family owned, away from the main house, away from family events. The work was easier, the environment professional, but fear gnawed at her. This felt like the beginning of being erased, fired quietly, sent home in disgrace. And then there was the woman. Late one evening, Amara saw her leaving the office building, elegant, professional, carrying a leather briefcase. She spoke with Jun-hyuk near his car, their conversation intense but not intimate. When the woman left, she squeezed his arm briefly, familiarly. Past lover, Amara thought, hating the jealousy that flickered in her chest. Or current one. That night, alone in her room, Amara cried for the first time since arriving in Korea. Not from humiliation, she'd survived that. Not from fear, she'd lived with that for months. But from sheer exhaustion. She was tired of being strong, tired of translating every interaction, tired of not knowing whether hope would save her or destroy her. She fell asleep with her mother's voicemail playing on repeat, the Yoruba words washing over her like a lullaby from a home that felt impossibly far away. The formal family dinner took place in the private dining room, a space reserved for decisions that shaped futures. 23 people sat around a table that could have seated 40, the emptiness itself a display of power. Amara served silently, moving between courses with practiced efficiency, trying to ignore the weight of eyes that followed her now wherever she went. She'd been back in the main house for this event specifically. A test, perhaps, or a trap. Yura sat near the head of the table, her beauty sharp and cold in the candlelight. When Amara approached to refill her wineglass, Yura's voice carried across the sudden quiet. "Oh, be careful with that vintage. It's quite expensive." A pause, delicate as a knife blade. "Though I suppose you wouldn't know the difference, would you?" A few nervous laughs rippled down the table. Amara's hand remained steady on the bottle. "I'm sure she's doing her best," Yura continued, addressing the table now rather than Amara. "We can't expect everyone to understand quality. It's simply a matter of upbringing." The word hung in the air, dripping with implications. Amara set the bottle down carefully, preparing to step back into her designated invisibility. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained calm. She'd learned this dance. Endure, survive, forget. Then a voice cut through the room, quiet but absolute. "From today, Amara Okoye works under my direct protection." The words came from the far end of the table. Seo Jun-hyuk hadn't raised his voice. He didn't need to. Every head turned toward him, conversations dying mid-breath. He sat perfectly still, his expression unchanged, as if he'd commented on the weather rather than detonating a bomb in the middle of dinner. The silence stretched, fragile and dangerous. Then he added, each word deliberate. "Anyone who disrespects her, disrespects me." Amara's vision swam. She gripped the edge of a chair to steady herself, unsure whether she was about to faint or scream or laugh hysterically. This couldn't be happening. People like Jun-hyuk didn't defend people like her. Not publicly. Not like this. The patriarch cleared his throat. "Jun-hyuk, perhaps we should discuss—" "There's nothing to discuss." Jun-hyuk's gaze moved to Yura, who'd gone pale beneath her makeup. "Do you understand?" Yura's mouth opened, closed, her smile cracked like porcelain. "Of course. I apologize. I didn't mean any disrespect to you, or to—" She couldn't seem to force out Amara's name. "To Amara," Jun-hyuk finished for her, his tone suggesting it wasn't a suggestion at all. "To Amara," Yura repeated, the words clearly poison on her tongue. "I apologize." The elders exchanged glances, some cautious, some calculating. But no one argued, no one questioned. In that moment, Amara understood something fundamental about power. It wasn't about volume or violence. It was about the space people gave you when you spoke. The dinner continued, but Amara barely registered the rest. She moved through her duties in a daze, hyper-aware of how differently people looked at her now, some with newfound respect, others with barely concealed resentment. By the next morning, everything had changed. She was moved to a private apartment in a building the family owned, small but infinitely nicer than her room above the garage. New work schedule, different responsibilities, and whispers that followed her like shadows. Mistress, kept woman, climbed her way up. But the strangest thing was Jun-hyuk himself. He didn't visit, didn't call, didn't seek her out. The man who'd publicly claimed her protection treated her like a stranger when their paths briefly crossed in hallways, professional, distant, untouchable. "He protects me but won't look at me," Amara whispered to her empty apartment. "What am I to him?" 3 days after the dinner, Jun-hyuk's assistant, a crisp woman named Ji-won, appeared at Amara's door with an envelope. "Mr. Seo asked me to give you this." Inside, enrollment papers for a hospitality management program at Seoul National University. Advanced courses, industry connections. Everything Amara had dreamed about before her world collapsed. And at the bottom, in neat handwriting, no strings attached. Your choice. Amara's hands shook as she read the papers again and again. Her pride screamed at her to refuse. This was charity. Pity. Another way for powerful people to feel good about themselves while keeping her dependent. But this was also her dream. The dream she'd locked away in a journal, the future she'd mourned, the person she'd wanted to become before survival became her only ambition. "Does he—" Amara looked at Ji-won, searching for answers. Why would he do this? Ji-won's expression softened slightly. Mr. Seo's mother was from the Philippines. She married into the family young. They treated her terribly. She died when he was 10. Quietly, without fighting back, without anyone protecting her. She paused. He was just a boy. Powerless. He swore he'd never be silent again. The words settled in Amara's chest, rearranging everything she thought she understood. She accepted the enrollment, not because she had no choice, but because refusing would mean letting fear win. She signed the papers with shame and hope tangled together, accepting a gift she didn't know how to repay. Outside her window, Seoul glittered with possibilities that still felt like someone else's life. But maybe, just maybe, they could become hers. 3 months passed like a dream Amara couldn't quite trust. She excelled in her courses: business management, hospitality operations, cultural integration in service industries. Her professors praised her insights. Her classmates respected her experience. For the first time since leaving Lagos, Amara felt like herself again, capable, intelligent, valued. But Jun Hyuk remained a ghost in her new life. She worked in a neutral office now, managing international guest relations for one of the family's hotel properties. Professional, respectable, distant from the family drama. When she encountered Jun Hyuk, maybe twice in 3 months, he nodded politely, asked brief questions about her studies, then disappeared before she could decode the expression in his eyes. "Is this what protection looks like?" she asked her reflection one evening. "Or abandonment?" The doubt grew like mould in damp places. Maybe he'd lost interest. Maybe she'd been a momentary impulse, a way to soothe his childhood guilt. Maybe she was, after all, just another charity case he could check off his conscience. Then everything shattered. It started with whispers in the office, colleagues who suddenly avoided her, conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. Then her supervisor called her in, his expression uncomfortable. "There are allegations," he said carefully, "about your relationship with Mr. Seo, about money." Amara's blood turned to ice. "What allegations?" "That you've been blackmailing the family, demanding money in exchange for silence about improper relations." "That's insane, I never—" "There are messages, photographs, evidence." The evidence appeared like magic: forged text conversations demanding payments, photos of her leaving expensive restaurants she'd never been to, bank records showing deposits she'd never received. Someone had built an entire fiction around her, detailed and damning. Tae-jin, Yura's fiancé. It had to be him. His resentment had been obvious from the start. His family position threatened by Jun Hyuk's attention to a maid, his masculine pride wounded by her very existence. The family called a meeting. Amara sat in a conference room facing 5 elders, their expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. Jun Hyuk was in Tokyo on business, unreachable, his absence feeling like abandonment. "Miss Okoye," the patriarch began, his English formal and cold. "These are serious accusations. She could defend herself, show them her real bank records, explain the impossibility of the timeline, deconstruct the fabricated evidence." But as she looked at their faces, Amara understood something crushing. They wanted to believe it. The story fit their worldview better than the truth. A foreign maid seducing their way up made sense. Jun Hyuk's inexplicable protection didn't. "I resign," she said quietly. "Miss Okoye. Effective immediately. I'll return to Nigeria." She stood, dignity her only remaining possession. "Thank you for the opportunity." She didn't wait for their response. In her apartment, Amara booked a flight for 3 days later, the soonest she could arrange. She packed her few belongings, her journal of hotel dreams tucked at the bottom of her suitcase like a buried coffin. The university enrollment papers she left on the table, unsigned withdrawal forms beside them. The letter to Jun Hyuk took hours to write. She drafted and discarded a dozen versions before settling on simplicity. "Mr. Seo, thank you for trying. I understand now that some worlds aren't meant for people like me, no matter how much protection we're offered. This isn't your failure, it's just reality. I don't belong here." With gratitude, Amara Mrs. Han found her the night before her flight, tears streaming down the old woman's weathered face. You're leaving. I have to. Because of lies. Because I'm tired, Mrs. Han. Amara's voice cracked. I'm tired of fighting to be seen as human. Mrs. Han took her hand, grip surprisingly strong. My nephew's mother died because no one protected her. She was kind, like you, strong, like you, and they broke her with whispers and cruelty until she had nothing left. The old woman's eyes were fierce. Jun Hyuk was 10 years old. He watched her fade. He swore he'd never be that silent boy again. You reminded him why he made that promise. Then why isn't he here? The question came out broken. Why am I facing this alone? He's on his way back. He doesn't know yet. Mrs. Han squeezed her hand. Don't leave before he can fight for you. But Amara had already made her decision. She'd learned something crucial in her months in Seoul. You can't build a life on someone else's protection. Eventually, you have to stand alone or not at all. That night, Ji-won appeared one last time. The woman you saw with Mr. Seo, she said quietly. His attorney. They've been working on something. A business venture. He wanted to surprise you. The words hit like stones. But it was too late. Amara's flight left in 14 hours, and she'd already said goodbye to the dream of belonging anywhere but home. Jun Hyuk's plane landed at 4 a.m. By 4:30, he was reading Amara's resignation letter in his office, Ji-won standing nervously nearby. By 5, he'd seen the fabricated evidence, understood the conspiracy, and felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Rage. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, surgical kind that dismantled lives quietly. Where is she? His voice was calm. That made it more terrifying. Packing. Her flight leaves at 2 this afternoon. And Taijin? At his apartment. Jun Hyuk stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. Call him. Tell him I'm coming. The confrontation lasted 7 minutes. Jun Hyuk didn't shout, didn't threaten. Simply showed Taijin evidence of his own, financial irregularities, business dealings that wouldn't survive scrutiny, relationships that would crumble under examination. Not illegal, but damaging, career-ending, reputation-destroying. You have 24 hours to leave Korea, Jun Hyuk said quietly. If you're still here after that, I stop being polite. Tae-jin was on a flight to Singapore by evening. Power, Jun Hyuk had learned young, wasn't about violence. It was about knowing exactly which thread to pull to unravel someone's entire world. But Amara was the thread he couldn't bear to lose. He found her at Incheon Airport at 1 o'clock, her boarding pass already in hand, her small suitcase beside her. She sat in the departure lounge staring at nothing, her expression exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. Amara. She looked up, shock flashing across her face before she schooled it into neutrality. Mr. Seo. Don't. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Don't call me that. Not now. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making a mistake. Her laugh was bitter. The mistake was staying as long as I did. You're not my responsibility, she continued before he could respond. I'm not your guilt, or your redemption, or your project. I need to go home and remember who I was before all of this. You were never my responsibility, Jun Hyuk said quietly. You were my reminder. Amara turned to face him fully, confusion and hurt warring in her expression. My mother was from Manila, he continued, words he'd never spoken aloud to anyone. She married my father when she was 22. Beautiful, kind, hopeful. His jaw tightened. They destroyed her, not with violence, with whispers, with corrections, with daily reminders that she didn't belong. She died when I was 10, quietly, without fighting, without anyone protecting her. Jun Hyuk. I was a child, powerless. I swore I'd never be silent again. He looked at her then, really looked, and Amara saw something raw in his eyes. Then I saw you. Your strength, your dignity, the way you refused to break even when they tried to break you. You reminded me why I made that promise. Then why did you keep me at a distance? The question came out broken. Why protect me but never? Why did you leave me alone? Because I didn't want to trap you. His hand moved toward hers, stopped just short of touching. If I loved you close, you'd never know if you stayed for me or for yourself. If you stayed because you wanted to, or because you felt obligated, because you had feelings, or because you were grateful. The words hung between them, fragile and honest. I stayed because of the opportunity, Amara whispered. I'm leaving because I fell in love with someone who won't let me close. June-hyuk's breath caught. I kept distance because you deserved the choice. Every choice. Without my influence, without my power making you feel like you owed me anything. He finally took her hand, his touch gentle, asking permission even now. I've been building something, for months. A hotel brand, boutique properties bridging African and Asian design, cultural exchange, ethical employment, your vision, from your journal. Amara's eyes widened. My journal? How did you... Mrs. Han, she recognized something in you. The same fire my mother had before they extinguished it. He pulled out a folder from his bag, handed it to her. Your name is on the incorporation documents. 60% ownership. Final decision-making authority. It's yours. I'm just the investor who hopes you'll let him be part of it. Tears streamed down Amara's face as she opened the folder. Business plans, architectural renderings, partnership agreements. Her dreams, expanded and refined and made real. Come back, June-hyuk said softly. Not as my protégé, not as someone I saved, as my partner, in business. He paused, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen, and maybe, if you choose it, in everything else. Amara looked at him, really looked, and saw not power or pity, but something infinitely more dangerous. Hope. I need to see it first, she said finally. Everything you've built, before I can answer. He nodded, understanding. Then let's go. She missed her flight, and for the first time in months, Amara felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The presentation took place in the Han family's main conference room 2 weeks later. 50 people filled the space, family members, potential investors, hospitality industry leaders, and journalists from major business publications. The energy was formal, expectant, curious about what Seo Jun-hyuk had been building in secret. Amara sat in the front row, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wore a tailored navy suit Jun-hyuk's stylist had helped her choose, her hair pulled back in a professional bun, her hands steady despite the chaos inside her chest. Jun-hyuk stood at the front, a presentation screen behind him showing the company logo, a geometric pattern blending Korean Hanok architecture with Yoruba textile designs. Thank you for coming, he began, his voice carrying the quiet authority that made rooms listen. Today, I'm introducing a new venture in the hospitality sector. Not just hotels, but cultural bridges, spaces where East and West Africa meet East Asia, where design tells stories, where employment is ethical, management is diverse, and guests experience something they can't find anywhere else. The first slides appeared, stunning architectural renderings of hotels in Lagos, Accra, Seoul, and Busan. Interiors that married Korean minimalism with bold African prints, restaurants featuring fusion cuisines, staff training programs built on respect and advancement. The concept emerged from observing a gap in the market, Jun-hyuk continued. Business travellers and tourists seeking authentic cultural exchange, not superficial tourism. Properties that honour both traditions without diluting either. Murmurs of interest rippled through the audience. Then Jun-hyuk pressed a button, and the next slide appeared. A photograph of Amara, professional and confident, beside her title. The CEO and creative director of Okoye Seo Hospitality, Amara Okoye. The room erupted in whispers. Heads turned toward her. Amara felt heat rise in her face, but she stood, walking to the front with deliberate grace. Jun-hyuk stepped aside, giving her the space. These designs come from years of study, Amara began, her accent clear and unapologetic. From understanding what makes guests feel welcomed versus tolerated, from experiencing both. She clicked to the next slide, her original journal sketches beside the refined architectural plans. What you see here isn't just business, it's a vision of hospitality where everyone belongs. She walked them through the business model, sustainable sourcing, local artisan partnerships, staff advancement programs, profit-sharing structures. Every detail from her journal, expanded with Jun Hyuk's resources and connections, but anchored in her foundational vision. When she finished, the room was silent for 3 heartbeats. Then the questions began. Intelligent, engaged, excited. Investors wanted in. Industry leaders praised the innovation. Even the family elders nodded with what looked like genuine respect. At the back of the room, Yura sat very still, her expression unreadable. When the presentation ended and people began networking over champagne, she approached Amara slowly. "I owe you an apology," Yura said quietly. "A real one. Not because I have to, but because I should have done this months ago." Amara studied her, seeing not the cruel woman from the gathering, but someone smaller, uncertain. "Why now?" "Because I was terrified, of becoming irrelevant, of not mattering in a family where power is everything." Yura's smile was sad. "I made you small so I could feel big. That was wrong." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was acknowledgement. Sometimes that was enough. After the crowd dispersed, Jun Hyuk found Amara on the terrace, city lights spreading below them like spilled diamonds. "Why 60%? She asked without preamble. "Why give me control?" "Because it's yours," he said simply. "Your vision, your leadership, your company. I'm just lucky you let me be part of it." Amara turned to face him, all the fear and doubt of the past months crystallizing into clarity. "I thought you were keeping me at a distance because I wasn't enough, because I was just a reminder of your guilt." "You were never not enough." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "You were always everything. I just needed you to see it first." She took his hand then, not hesitantly, not with obligation, but with choice, with certainty. "I see it now." "Good." His thumb traced circles on her palm, intimate and patient. "Because I'd very much like to kiss you, Amara Okoye, but only if that's something you want." She answered by closing the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that tasted like beginnings and choices, and love that had been earned through respect rather than rescue. Later, Mrs. Han confessed she'd been showing Jun Hyuk Amara's journal entries for months. "I saw in you what my sister-in-law had," the old woman explained. "Fire, vision, the same fire that got extinguished in her. I wasn't going to let that happen again." Amara hugged her tightly, understanding finally that she'd never been alone. She'd been seen all along. 6 months later, the first Okoye Seo hospitality property opened its doors in the heart of Seoul. The lobby was a masterpiece, Korean hanji paper screens casting warm light over walls adorned with Adir textile patterns, furniture that married Seoul's minimalism with Lagos's bold colours. Every detail told a story of 2 worlds meeting as equals. Amara stood at the entrance in a custom gown, deep indigo with gold threading that honoured both her heritage and her present. She greeted guests with the confidence of someone who'd finally stopped translating herself for other people's comfort. "Amara, my daughter." She turned to see her mother emerging from a car, healthy and radiant, tears streaming down her face. They embraced in the middle of the lobby, months of separation collapsing into one perfect moment. "Mama, this is Jun Hyuk," Amara said, her voice thick with emotion. Her mother studied him with the piercing gaze only mothers possess. Then she smiled. "You see her? Really see her?" "Every day," Jun Hyuk replied in careful Yoruba he'd been learning. "It's impossible not to." The opening reception filled with faces from Amara's journey. Mrs. Han arrived in elegant hanbok, now an honorary board member whose opinions finally carried weight in family discussions. Minjun supervised security, but spent most of the evening grinning proudly at his friend's success. Even Yura attended, quieter now, humbled, working at a non-profit for immigrant women. She approached Amara briefly. "Thank you for not destroying me when you could have," Yura said softly. "We all deserve second chances," Amara replied. "I hope you find yours." As evening settled, music filled the lobby. Junhyuk extended his hand to Amara, leading her onto the makeshift dance floor. They moved together easily, the awkwardness of those early months replaced by comfortable intimacy. "Thank you for not saving me," Amara whispered against his shoulder. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile reserved only for her. "Thank you for saving yourself. I just provided resources. You did the work." She pulled back to look at him. "We did the work. Partners, remember?" "Partners," he agreed, kissing her forehead. "In everything." The celebration continued around them, but Amara's mind drifted to a moment 6 months ago, standing in that same family mansion, invisible and humiliated, convinced she'd never be more than what others decided she was. "I came here to survive," she thought. "I learned to live. The difference. Someone saw my strength before I remembered I had it." Later, in a quiet corner, Amara and Junhyuk spread architectural plans across a table, the Lagos location, scheduled to break ground in 3 months. "Coming home," she murmured, tracing the designs with her finger. "On your terms," he added, his hand covering hers. Their fingers intertwined over the blueprints, two people who'd learned that real power wasn't about control or rescue. It was about recognizing strength in others and choosing to stand beside it, equal and unafraid. Outside, Seoul glittered with possibility. Inside, Amara finally felt like she belonged, not because someone gave her permission, but because she'd given it to herself. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button. This channel is built on stories that matter. And let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt invisible in a place where you desperately wanted to be seen? Drop your story in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, you are not your circumstances. You are your choices. See you in the next story.